I'm Geoff Eido. This is Lunacy, where we discern the sacred from the insane and admit that whether we like it or not, we are all profoundly affected by the cycles of the moon. How?
That was great.
My guest today is Shelly Covert, who is a member of the Nisenan tribe. I believe you're kind of the head of the Nisenan tribe in a way. Spokesperson for the Nisenan tribe.
Yes.
Which is also the tribe of people that were indigenous to this area that we're on right now, this land that we're on right now. And so you represent a group of people that I'm very passionate about, defending and also like
helping. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Supporting.
Honoring
assisting.
is really honoring.
Right.
So,
even just seeing is good.
Yeah.
We're way back over here where we should be way over there. But yeah, just even the visibility, even people saying the word Nisenan is just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. That's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I just want to start with a little prayer. We just want to say, thank you, Creator. Thank you, Great Spirit, for this time to be here. Thank you for this beautiful land that we're on. Thank you for all the people that came before us on this land. We pray that this conversation is helpful to other people and demonstrates a different way of being in the world and brings us closer to harmony with each other and Mother Earth. Thank you.
Very nice. Good. Yeah, it's good.
So I'd love to, Shelly, I'd love to hear a little bit about you and also like the history of the Nisenan. I'm aware that Woodrow Wilson made the Nisenan a tribe in 1913 and then in 1964. If you could just take us through a little bit of that history, that'd be great.
Yeah, well, thank you for being educated about those things. It is sometimes, I don't want to say it's complex because it's not necessarily complex, but it's layered. There's a lot of words and things that are used that we don't have any context to talk about some of these things. So it just kind of mushes over people's brains of too much information sometimes, things about the recognition, federal recognition, how it was achieved and how it was lost, when, all the different players in these moments in time, the different moments that the world was in, that America was in, that the leadership was in, where racism is at any given moment. Is there genocide happening? Are there friendly folk? Mm-hmm. Sometimes we find the reason our family survived was because there was a friendly homesteader who, instead of killing or chasing the Indians off or removing them, they let them stay. Mm-hmm. And we have one marriage in our family specifically where my great grandmother was married at like 12 or 13 years old to some old guy who came in to make his fortunes here in the gold fields in Rough and Ready, actually, was on some early censuses. But instead of doing that, he was somehow absorbed into the tribe through that marriage, and he homesteaded the land right at Rice's Crossing where they were living. And so he homesteaded the land, and then the people, all his in-laws, became the workforce. And they had a stage stop and a ranch and these different things. So, you zoom into these moments that are just moments could be any of our histories, where you get the women who are, not even mentioned by name in most historical documentation. And you have these Native folks who are here in this moment. It could be any of us. Mm-hmm. And it happens to be our tribe that these things were happening to. And they were just at the mercy, literally, of everything that was going on. And it's much like we experienced with the mine. When someone said to me, what's your opinion on the reopening of the Idaho Maryland mine? I couldn't even process it. I was like, oh no, that's been closed a long time. Like I couldn't even get to the concept that somebody was.
That's a real thing.
Yeah. And I had said, well, I'm going to have a biased opinion about this, right? Given the history of what happened during the gold rush to the people and like who's left and all these things. But, all of this and all the moments in the legislation and just all the stuff that's the hard piece for people to take in and get a snapshot of everything that happened as a whole. It's really hard for people. And parsing it down, we identify today as the Nevada City Rancheria Nisenan tribe. And that is our political structure that's in place we were terminated. So we were recognized in 1913.
1913 by Woodrow Wilson.
By Woodrow
who
Wilson.
was a fraternity brother of mine, actually.
Really?
Yeah. He
How
was a
does
Phi
that
Kappa Psi.
work? Oh,
He was like in
okay.
it was a social fraternity back in the day, but he's
Okay.
a most famous member.
Oh,
But anyway, he did some
interesting.
cool things,
Yeah.
including that. So he
and I've heard that
recognized.
some of the things, in today's context could be questionable, where he may have been forward moving on
Certain
things like
things.
recognizing our tribe. We're very lucky about that.
Yeah.
And then other things is like, you're talking about a long time ago when all these things were okay, But his wife, interestingly, was one of the suffragettes that was very connected here locally.
Wow.
And so you get here with our rancheria, and then up at Bidwell in Chico area,
Okay.
where Mr. Bidwell's wife, also a suffragette. So you get these native daughters of the Golden West, native sons of the Golden West. They're very much those organizations like the Masons, or all back in the gold rush days. There were so many of them, Oddfellows, and but you have these women who aren't mentioned in history documentation really. But as you dig in, you start finding these threads of how did he, as president, know about us out here? How did that happen? And then you see his wife's connection with, is it Betsy Ross that was out here a lot with the suffragette movement and all this stuff?
That sounds right, yeah.
And it just, we have one of my heroines, Belle Douglas. She was a local suffragette here. Her father was from the Rolfe family, who was very affluent from the East Coast. So they came not necessarily for the gold, but for the building of the political world as the gold rush is happening.
Yeah.
And they're very influential people. So she's the one, we have just letters and letters from her penned in her gorgeous handwriting to the Bureau of Indian Affairs when she's trying to protect the tribe.
And this was from back in 1913.
Yeah, this was and earlier. She was a protector. She saw how the Indians were being abused on the rancheria. And they were getting burned out and just psychologically abused and physically abused. And I guess that's where that phrase comes from, when you're really off the reservation. Things like they were so literal, like they could not leave or the bad things would happen to them. And she stepped in and said, she just started taking charge and trying to help. And it really is because of her that
Woodrow Wilson's wife.
This is Belle Douglas.
Belle Douglas.
I think
okay,
she was really good friends with Woodrow's wife.
I see. Okay, gotcha.
So you get,
Belle Douglas. Okay,
then
got it.
once you get the gossip, right, then the stories start making sense.
Right.
And some of that really hard to understand stuff that makes it look so complicated falls away. And again, it keeps coming back to just a human story.
Right.
And
the rancheria, that means reservation essentially.
It's a reservation, yeah.
And so Woodrow Wilson declared in 1913, he was like, okay, the Nisenan tribe is a tribe and they have this particular land, which is up here somewhere.
On Cement Hill, it was 76 acres originally. And somewhere along the line, they deeded away half an acre for the airstrip that's in Nevada City. And back, there were mining claims all surrounding it. So there were these fights people just, for 70 years, they were trying to get the Indians taken off the land so that they could have the mineral rights. And I mean, it was just when you think it's good because there's recognition and a little bit of community protection because of Belle Douglas, all this other stuff, there was never any peace for the people ever.
Right.
And it may look on the outside like one thing, but inside it's just the continuous turmoil. And I should say, I use the word Indian, which is, you should always ask the tribal people what they choose to be called. A lot of the family and tribal members go by Nisimkawak, which is our specific language district here. And I say Indian as long as we're seeking to have our federal recognition back and the federal government has Indian programs, I will always identify that way. Because if anybody has experience with the federal government, the last thing you want to do is like change something up on them and make it any more confused than it already is. So
that makes sense.
Changing the label of how we fit into the Indian programs for the federal government.
And their legal definition, keep it consistent.
And my grandparents use that word. I mean, it's been, become a label that most of the tribal members use when they are identifying themselves. It's like a permission was given recently that we can identify any way we want, which is very new.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I like to give that disclaimer.
It's a good one.
Right?
Yeah.
And,
Thanks for doing that.
Thank you. Right. And I don't speak for every Native person on the planet. And I know that word can be very contentious. And like this is in India and we weren't Indians. So,
Right.
I get all that stuff. But there's a very specific reason why I continue to use that word in the context I do when I speak about it.
Sure.
But the only other thing that's really unique for the Nevada City Rancheria and the way we were created is that a lot of reservations and rancherias in California were being created for homeless Indians at that time.
Oh.
And ours was created specifically for our tribal group here.
Okay.
So that is, and you'd think some of these things end up mattering with the fight with the federal government, but they don't.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I mean, hopefully we can. Look, part of the intention here with having you on the podcast is like to get people involved and figure out a way that they can help. And I know on your website there's kind of some information about that. So we'll dig into that a little bit later. But so then fast forwarding, so there was 72 acres or so. 76 acres that was created for the Nisenan tribe. And then in 1964, what happened?
It was called the California Termination Act. And it was...
That sounds terrible.
Right. So it really was put into effect in 1958. But we went back to the archives and you could see the pre-legislation of they tried to get bills passed and they just wouldn't pass. And so it started like in 1953 and they would put out a legislative piece and it would not get voted through. And you can see that they made edits and changes and here they come in the next round and they put it out again. So they kept doing that until one finally took hold. And it terminated in California 44 of the rancherias that were federally recognized. And like each individual moment could make sense maybe in the moment of America that this tribes are getting terminated or whatever. But when you put it together with everything else that happened that led up to it, it's just the pressure and the discrimination, the racism. If anything good happened, like when they got recognized in 1913, there was this moment that things could change or there could be a moment of stabilization because everything comes on the heels of one thing and another thing. It's just like
there was backlash.
Pulling like blanket out from under people or when you pull the rug out from under somebody. As soon as they could get their feet under them at any given moment with support from the community, it was another thing that came and just sideswiped and blindsided them. And so there's never any moment to recover. And this is on the heels of starting first with the genocide. I mean, 98% of the people were gone.
Is that true for your tribe as well? Absolutely. That's the statistic for the Nisenan?
Yeah.
Wow. I'm so sorry.
It falls between like 94 and 98%, and I'm like, for me, I can't argue that 4%. Even if we go with the 92%, let's say, it's like, that's still horrible. It's an awful thing. And not just the people, but the land and the animals.
Right.
All the animals that were here that still exist in our creation stories. And they're teachers. They teach humans how to be, how to mother, how to live and be in a society together. And they, are California grizzly bears on our state flag, and it's extinct here in California.
Yeah.
And the great rivers are moved and changed and dammed, and just the amount of loss of life. Oh, God, that makes me a little bit emotional. I don't think I've ever thought about it quite that way. The amount of loss for them, it's 100% for some of them. And we continue. I even am so guilty of it when I'm talking about the tribe and what we need, but we're nothing without the animals, the soil, the water, and the air. We're nothing. And we're all in the same boat. And that's the thing. I can talk about the tribe and I know a lot of tribes get tired of being in the moment of despair and talking about what happened and talking about the loss and the genocide. They're like, we are still here and we're strong and resilient. But until we can grasp the loss of this extractive mining or whatever we as humans are deciding to do on the planet today, or a small percentage of humans that are doing this, and the rest of us are bystanders, and we are going to feel these effects.
Yeah.
But until, not only do we need to see it for humanity, but we've got to see it in the bugs and the animals and the birds and the fish and everything, because without them, we're nothing.
Yeah.
And
except for mosquitoes.
I feel the exact same. Right now, I have huge lumps all over me because of mosquitoes. Someone told me, because I really struggle with that one, somebody said, but they're also pollinators. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Okay.
Somebody who said that to me, I have a lot of love and respect for. And if she said it, it must be so. But I've yet to do my own research because I need that reframing in my mind, because I don't like them.
But just to come back to your point,
right.
We are, and I think finally we're at a moment in history where people are recognizing, oh, maybe the climate is getting warmer because of stuff that we did. And oh, there is a Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And oh, what are we going to do with all this trash? And I wonder what's going to happen when we just consume until nothing is left.
Right.
And I think that we've reached a moment in history where the voices of those of us who are saying, hey, stop it, are becoming stronger and stronger. And I wholeheartedly believe that we are at a point in history where it's possible for us to transform everybody to see, oh, wait, life is sacred. This planet is sacred. The fact that we exist is sacred. Yeah. And all this stuff is maybe less important than the spirit that brought us here. And
it doesn't have to be either or. Either we get I love my Jeep. My grandma used to laugh at me because she's just like, you girls couldn't last one day back in the, without your electricity, your running water, your washing machine, your car, your roads, on and on, everything. Right. And she, strong woman, had 6 daughters, lived out in the woods with no house, sometimes with bears and mountain lions, And she, I honestly, because I think a lot of the population, maybe when they're faced with healthy planet equals, I don't get any of my stuff.
Right. No more Pepsi.
We have to go, right. We have to go back and have a really hard life now. We're scrubbing everything by hand.
We have to be innovative in figuring out ways to treat the planet well while we're doing what we're doing. And maybe, less plastic cups and more actual containers that we carry around and get refilled like that. Yeah. But so just going back to the Nisenan and your play, because I want to get that out of the way sort of earlier so that people know what to do, and then we can move on to some more philosophical discussion. Awesome. But so what people right now, the fight that you're fighting, and I just want to honor you for doing this, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'm in this moment of, we mentioned a little before of I've had this old narrative of I never really signed up for this. I didn't know what I was getting into. It's a lot of work. I also am very much enjoying growing our nonprofit and bringing these conversations forward from our lens and our point of view. Yeah. And I'm not necessarily asking people to change or do something. I think all of our conversations could be held without the defenses coming up here locally. Is if I start talking about the tribe, people they literally get kind of puffy and go, well, I didn't kill anybody, or they get in these defense
Don't blame
modes.
me for what my ancestor did, which, okay, but here we are.
Here I'm
what
obviously
do you do about
not a full-blood Native person. And so the reason we're alive and the destruction of the people are both here and present. And so I do have to go down that rabbit hole sometimes to wonder, I wonder, my people killed my people, that mentality.
But that's ultimately, in large part, that's such a beautiful thing about who you are, because your people loved your people. And so therefore here you are. So you're an example of what is possible.
Yeah. And I just think we're smart enough and creative enough to have our cake and eat it too. And I do believe that if we can work through some of these really big out-front social justice deficits, things that are missing in society right now, and we can exemplify an example of and figure out a way to make our tribe visible without harming anybody, without getting, like the thing is, like, you guys just want to get recognized so you can get a casino. There's no casino. There's no gain at the end of this except for sovereignty and to be able to be real.
Yeah.
And honored for this long, long legacy of the leaders that we had and a beautiful way of working in perpetual motion with nature.
Yeah. It's really nice to hear that. And I know for me, I mean, that's why I moved up here, like we moved up here to get closer to nature, and because of that, and it's such a beautiful place. And there is unquestionably something about this place that is magical and transformative. And I think for me, the reason my wife and I moved up here was we wanted to be in a place that was truly inspiring, and it is that here.
It is.
I mean,
Absolutely.
we would look out our window and watch deer go by, and and squirrels, and it's just awesome.
And then right on the heels of that is I think the other thing that super valuable, I mean, of course, for our tribe, and we need this little shopping list of things to happen for our tribe and how the community can help those things move forward. Because I'm getting old. My elders, we've already lost my grandma's generation. They're all gone. And every generation you move out, we get further away from, yes, the destruction and the death and all the horrible, horrible things, but we get further away from the memory of this place as a living being and what it was like.
Yeah.
Because without that, how do we even know what we're fighting for? Because the folks who were here who knew that so intimately were nearly completely all wiped out. And everybody else came after. And, we've had this conversation. I know my executive assistant, Ember Amador, we drive around together a lot, going to different meetings and different things. And if I'm going out to look at property for a site evaluation or something like that, I have a lens that looks out and sees destruction. It looks like a beautiful forest, but that's not how it's supposed to look. It's completely untended. It's almost like walking into a toddler's room and they're toys and everything's just everywhere. And thinking that, oh, this looks so nice here. If you didn't know that there's a basket you could put all that stuff in, to tidy it up even more, that there's this lens of when you just learning about a river or a creek or even a spring, that their floodplain, what necessity it is to the entirety of a landscape, all the whole functionality. And once you can see the mess and see what's missing because of the dams and the reservoirs that we've created to disallow those natural floodplains to happen, I think people's worlds their eyes open in a different way. And we're talking about the sustainability and the perpetuity of nature itself. It knows best.
Yeah.
And we can benefit from that without, talk to a lot of sustainable food farmers, and for my context, that's not sustainable if you have to dig it and water it. Nature, our natural landscape is there and growing and doing its thing, and we encourage or discourage growth. That's about it.
Right.
And it was a very fruitful life. There's such a deep value to share in that context with people who are mindful and awake and understanding, like doing things better, looking at the scarcity of food that could come along given a drought or a fire or whatever at any given moment, and giving them a deeper context of something to achieve. And that memory of what the natural state of this place is, then with encouraged human hands, because we can light fire,
right. That's right.
We can do the things that we're supposed to do, and that there might be a little memory of a guiding post to help us do better in the future. That's where I get excited. And I don't have to talk about the death and destruction and despair, which is a necessity right now.
We have to know the
history. People don't know. None of us were taught this stuff.
No, not really. It's definitely not taught at school. You have to dig deeper to find out the numbers of people that were just absolutely massacred, either through straight up murder or, disease or whatever. And the battles of Geronimo. And, there's not like a lot of conversation around that. And then, so that has to be accounted for on some level. But also what you're saying, on the sort of the brighter end of the spectrum is like, hey, look, we can see a beautiful way to be with nature in a way that we can coexist, as opposed to trying to dominate and have dominion over everything, which has been the tradition for hundreds of years, right?
We are equal with all other life on this planet.
Yeah.
Almost everything has a purpose that we can't see. Either we're not smart enough, or it's too small, or it's just like, what are those ants doing and how are they so aligned with one another in their little line? There's probably a master plan at work that we have. It's none of our business. We have no idea. And to assume that we know that we are more important than whatever it is we're talking about is the biggest hurdle, I think, toward any of it.
Yeah, and absolutely. And it goes back to greed and just scarcity and being afraid, et cetera. And, you know, it's time for us to just see a new way where we can actually, benefit each other and the planet. And as you say, kind of engineer and be creative about ways that we can live in harmony with the world without tearing it to shreds.
And that means breaking some of these systems that don't work. And I don't mean break as like I'm wanting civil war or something.
No, transforming. Let's say transforming those systems. Because we just came
off of the war thing. We're not stable yet. If you want to call it a war, you can't really call it a war, one-sided war. But I'm not into that at all. Like, things are actually okay in comparison to what my mom went through, what my grandparents went through, et cetera, et cetera.
But then again, so many of them are wiped out. And I don't know what you've already kind of said there's like 4% of the Nisenan people remaining. Yeah. How many people are in the tribe?
Right now we have 143 members. And, and it's not, again, not to keep banging on the drum, but I mean, to give context, there are not a lot of people that are stable, let alone thriving. And these are some of these things are new knowledge for me, learning about historic trauma. I've heard it a lot, but I didn't know what that meant. It's constantly unfolding. And it's like, my analogy is like when you have a bunch of necklaces and they sit in your drawer and then you try to pull one out and it just makes the knot tighter.
Yeah.
I had this with my grandmother's. I want to ask and I want to know. And then I'm being extractive with my own grandmother and my own culture.
Right.
And walking a fine line.
Because then they have to re-experience the trauma so that they can share with you what happened, which was so terrible that they don't want to think about it.
And if we don't need to experience it, then why bring it up? Right.
Right. And I mean, that's something that super fascinating to me is, they've proven that there are 14 generations in our DNA. Mm-hmm. So on some level, the cells of who I am go back those 14 generations and you as well, which means it goes through pretty much all of the trauma that people face. And so then there's evidence where it's like, okay, well, you talk about ancestral trauma. That sounds like it's made up, but no, it's not. Right. It's not. Genes are real. DNA is real. And so that on some level that is part of our history. Certainly, even though it doesn't present itself, obviously, like you're not seeing the massacres that happened, but they are felt somehow in who you are and how you are in this world.
Absolutely.
And so first of all, what people can do is they can go to nisenan.org, Nisenan.org.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
That's a gateway for them to contribute to your nonprofit.
Yes.
And then also probably ongoingly they can join your newsletter, right?
Yes.
And then also there may be like some petitions or things like that you guys will post.
Absolutely. The nonprofit really is our boat because there is no federal recognition. The tribe doesn't actually exist on anybody's paperwork somewhere. So creating the nonprofit, really, it was people 14 years ago, maybe even more, people would want to hand me a check. And I'm like, there's no bank account. So it was really for a very practical reasons that CHIRP was even manifested. And
CHIRP.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Like chirp, chirp, like the bird. Yes. It's the California Heritage Indigenous Research Project.
Okay, cool.
And it really is standing in some kind of, it's fake, but because none of this is my other thing, is like none of this stuff is actually real. Like a corporation is not real. Mm-hmm. Your job might be real. The stuff that goes back and forth might be real. And I don't, because people get when I say things like this, but all in all, it doesn't exist.
Right. But there is an organization.
there's
is
an
a
organization.
nonprofit.
It's fake, but yes, it's real, and it's very important because we're right. We've been.
It's fake like money is fake, but money is real. But money is fake, but money is real.
Absolutely. But there you go. That is the thing that we put our intentions, and we all agree that this fake thing is actually real now.
Yeah.
We all agree.
Right.
Otherwise, I would have $1 million bills in my house and I would burn them up if I was cold because they aren't real, you know. So you get into this moment of we've all agreed that these fake things are real. That's the place where we can all agree that it's okay for someone to buy a piece of property next door to us from a different country even and come in and mine it, or just maybe they just want to blow it up. I don't know. Whatever they want to do to it. And the resources will go to that person, and none of us have any say so.
Yeah, which is exactly what was happening with Rise Gold.
Absolutely.
And they failed, but they're going to be back. Somebody else is going to be back. And I mean, it's a Canadian company. No, I love Canadians. My wife is Canadian, whatever. But like, the point is, this Canadian company, as you say, came in. They had the mineral rights to all this area that was literally underneath the feet of people living there. Yeah. There's pretty undeniable evidence that there's going to be environmental calamity that goes on. The water's going to get polluted. Certainly some people's wells are going to get, it might.
What's your context? What's your proof, Shelly? I'm like
pulling asbestos out of the air, out of the ground, toxic waste. You're doing things that the earth didn't intend to be done, et cetera, that has actual ramifications. Then you take all that money and then we all get cancer.
Yeah.
And
they go home maybe wealthy and go get another one, and we're left with a big crater.
Absolutely.
Here.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's an example, out on the ridge, on the San Juan Ridge, they reopened a mine out there, and it ruined everyone's wells that you still cannot drink from those wells today. And this was, 30, 40 years? God, I'm old. 30, 40 years ago, I was in school out there.
You're not old. You look great.
I'm so old.
No, you're not.
I'm starting to feel it. No. But that is the moment. If we can influence that mindset with one another, in whatever topic it is that we say, actually, the consensus of all of us, the millions of us and the one of somebody else, we don't, actually, maybe we agreed to that before, but we don't agree to that part now, that we have no say-so because of private property lines. There's got to be a new layer there. That if something that big and extractive, or a new dam, new mine, something that's really impactful, that we should all, we got to say in the way that we all were welcomed in to join the fight against something. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, what kind of changes need to be made that gives us individuals as American citizens or California citizens the ability
or Earth citizens, go on.
Right.
Yeah.
But, that's the point that needs to be fixed, that we need to know that we can change things at that level.
Yeah.
And that's where it needs to change. Because then it affects everything
through the system.
The cows that are sitting in the little pens because they're just growing to be delicious hamburgers.
Right.
And,
fed at them. Yeah.
Yeah, across the board. But that's the moment. And I don't know that that's ever been, if people have tried to influence it there in that way to go along with all these conversations of social justice, earth justice, et cetera.
Right. And it's sort of like, I think that there's this idea that it's like a fad, here come the hippies again. They're going to talk about social justice and getting rights for indigenous people and recognize, there they come. Let's get back to making money and oil.
You're right.
But that's not the moment that we're in. We're in a moment where there's undeniable proof that the planet is in peril and that it's suffering and that it's getting hotter and there's fire. There's no question that the way of doing business of humanity is causing irreparable harm to the planet. And either we can transform and recognize the honor of life and who we are on this planet and our spirit and our interrelatedness with all the different species and plants, or we can just give the world to the cockroaches and they'll figure it out.
Sure they will.
Those are kind of, so in a large part, I feel like you and I and a lot of people that are in the quote unquote conscious community, which I just scoff at because it's ridiculous. Like we all need to wait. We all need to be waking up all the time. So it's
if I'm awake, I'm pretty conscious.
There's no separate.
But I couldn't say I'm more conscious than any other person in any given topic. But
exactly.
I do have my opinions based on my experience.
Yes. But either way, like there are those of us who are speaking up and speaking out to say, hey, it's time for us to transform our ways and really embrace the planet, or like we're probably just die. We're probably just gonna nuke each other, and that's the end of it. And then
I
it's
say
over.
that all
you know
the
what I mean?
time.
We're just
I'm
gonna be
like,
a flaming ball floating through space.
Yes, and if this is the end, like it's hard to be in your good carbon footprint or whatever. It's work, you know. And
that's not even the answer. Per se.
This is one little.
It's not like if I do all these good deeds and lower my carbon footprint, that the world's not still going to go to shit.
Right.
I mean, a friend of mine, Zach Bush, developed a molecule that eats plastic, but I'm not sure where that is. That's something that could like dramatically alter the way that things happen. But I gotta get him on the show anyway. But like that's the point, is that we need to like invent and look at different ways of doing things that that really do recognize our interrelatedness.
We have to, because, and here's been my disclaimer lately. If we're going out, I want to know, because then I can like get a Hummer. I can do all the things that I might not do today. Another new cell phone just because there's a new one out there. Oh my God, I need a new one right now.
Going on a jet.
Right? But, you know, and on the other hand, it's not too late.
No, it's really not too late.
It's not too late.
And I'll go down with the ship on this one, you know, and I think you will too. Absolutely. Like I'll go down fighting for this idea, this more beautiful world, you know, that we could, this walking the beauty way, this harmony with nature and each other, this like different way of looking at things, this valuing, you know, investigating.
It's really interesting. My husband and I, we're not fighters, like we don't fight with each other, but sometimes we'll get into a really good debate, and we're both stubborn. And so one of our debates
what's that like?
One of our debates is, I have gotten to the point, and I love technology. I really, really enjoy my digital stuff and everything that technology brings us today. Not all of it, maybe, because I don't know about all of it, but I have a pretty strong stake in the game of I like my technology.
Yeah, sure.
And I am pretty much of the mindset that I'm not sure we can have what our tribe had for thousands of years with nature, with the introduction of technology at all.
Yeah.
And I would love to, I want to be the fly on the wall to hear people debate that, because if we don't figure that out, it's either Terminator, right? We're getting our AI and everything. It's going to take over the world, and humans are going to go extinct anyway, because the machines are going to take us over. If you watch any good TV like that, like I do, of course.
Sure.
Or we have to go back to the Stone Age, really, or the old ways where there's nothing. And I wish and hope that we could figure out a way to have both.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously technology at this point has to be part of the solution. Otherwise,
right.
What? Yeah, you're right. We can't go back to, you know, the Avatar idea of like, oh, you know, the indigenous people are going to take spears and beat off the people with the guns. No, there's
maybe history
you
and a lot of
how the genocides happened in the first place was because people had arrows versus rifles.
Right, that spinning gun, the howitzer.
Yeah, that would just take them all out. They're all dead. Yeah, and your dragon things. They're all dead. I'm sorry. I love James Cameron. I think that movie's beautiful, but it's preposterous.
Sure. And you know, you have that in history. We have some local historical documents that talk about when the militias came out and were killing everybody, how they had their bow and arrow, and how they were probably amazing bow and arrow people, but their
awesome
arrows
archers.
just bounced off their stuff, and they would just get, their bows just didn't have the range, so they would stand back to a safe distance. And I can't help but thinking, going, what a bunch of babies and sissies that have to back up out of the range. Well, if you're not afraid of them, then why do you have to back up out of the range of the bow and arrow?
Give them a shot.
And then they stand back there with their, you know, just taking everybody out. And and it's real. There was no way to stand up to that. And then they would burn the villages and all their food. For anybody who survived would have no way to eat. And so the death from starvation was just, but talking about the technology and can we have nature with technology? I hope so.
I hope that we can create a world where we're using technology in order to be in harmony with nature, which I think we both agree is that's the solution. If you're enjoying this program, if you love Lunacy, please consider becoming part of our team. Go to patreon.com/Lunacy podcast to become a member of our team. You can choose a number of different levels to support us on a monthly basis so that we can continue the work of exploring the love operating system, how best to be of service, and how to live life to the fullest. Thank you so much for your support. Much love, everybody. You also went a little bit into the darkness of the history. And I think, if you're open to it, I feel like let's go dark here.
Oh, sure.
First of all, how many Nisenan people were there before?
It's a point that I think scholars are just now doing some of those number counting that they can find in documents. Okay. And we just had an amazing event where we had Dr. Benjamin Madley, who wrote the book An American Genocide. Okay. And it's not a light read. Mm-hmm. I've been through it. I'm on my 4th time through the book. Okay. And for myself and a lot of my tribal family members and tribal members who aren't family members, I was worried the depth of Madley's documentation from either their actual war records from, one military dude to the other military dude. Right. Their front page newspaper articles, their government documents from one person to another. These are heavily documented all over the place. There's people that say there was no genocide. Like this dude has proved it. That what happened here meets all 5 criteria for genocide. And it's just, it's really, sure. It's so gross.
To deny it is to deny the Holocaust.
We have to be able to see these things. Mm-hmm. No one wants to see these things.
So roughly, is there a rough number?
Right now, the 7,000 is what I used to be comfortable with, which is pretty local. Right. 9,000 is probably more accurate, but I think one of the scholars said 13,000. And I'm really believing now that is even conservative. Okay. We were called Maidu. Nobody even knew we were Nisenan. There's just all this history and stuff that can only come from the tribe. And it's been totally erased and unincluded. And
so back to the kind of the core question, there's probably somewhere between somewhere around 7 to 13,000, maybe more. God only knows back in the day,
probably more
when this place was it's a beautiful. There's a river. There's a lot of land here. There's a lot of natural.
And there's so much diversity of plant vegetation. Life.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. We had huge trade. We were very wealthy here. Yeah. Because it's easy here. Right.
And it was. So then what happened? Then, you mentioned the militia would come in and they would just take out their howitzers and just gun down hundreds of natives. Yeah. Was most of this in the 1840s, or is there a particular?
It goes, I think in Madley's book, he has the hardcore documentation from, I think he says 1848 to 1874 was state bounties on Indians, and those monies what do you call it when you give somebody reimbursed by the federal government? So
they would turn in a scalp or something.
$5. Wow. And just the stories in the old documents that the men would ride through town with just scalps and stuff hanging all off their horses and off their guns, and that they talk about how bad it smelled. I can't even. God. I don't even want to know. It's so gross.
I can imagine.
And thinking of those tight family units, people, it wasn't unheard of for people to live to be over 100 years old. And I know my grandpa's girlfriend, Minerva, who's Miwok, her great aunt died at 124 years old. Wow. And it wasn't that uncommon. That may have been really old.
Yeah.
But if you think you reverse engineer that, you could have 6 generations alive at one time.
Yeah.
And so when they're talking about, oh, the militia came and wiped out that village and there were some old people left there because they couldn't run. I mean, that's your immediate family that's living there in those places. If it was me, it would be my mom, my grandma, my grandma's mom, and my daughter, and maybe even my granddaughter there. That's who we're talking about. And there weren't strangers around. These are tightly kinship folks that are living together in these places. And that and what I was going to say earlier was, what I wish we could be more awake about or conscientious of just as humans is if you look at the Holocaust with the Jewish folks, the twistedness of Hitler, it's not a newsflash to us.
Right.
But what is a newsflash to most people that when we start talking about these things is the depravity and the violent, disgusting ways that the people here were killed a lot of the times.
Yeah.
And that we don't pause all of humanity on this planet and go, what in the hell is wrong with us?
Yeah.
Because that thing, whatever that Hitler thing, whatever that is, you're talking about, I mean, there were a lot of really bad people who came here for mining because they were unattached young men, a lot of prisoners and outlaws that came here because they could,
Right.
But there were also just some regular people who came and participated in these mass killings. And that to me is this just right in the bucket with destroying the planet. And nobody knows, or they got the memo and they're like, whatever. That is the other disturbing thing is when do we just stop and go, who are these people?
Yeah.
Look at humanity. This is bad.
And how do we allow this to happen? And how did other people allow this to happen?
How do we go back to that same thing with having some say-so of what happens next door to all of us?
Yeah.
The same thing on a human level of how, people go to trial, they go to jail. It was just the rape, killing people.
Yeah.
My grandpa told me a story, and one day in my Shelly's Ripley Believe It or Not museum that I'm going to have somewhere, I'm going to find one of these things. But he said they would cut the women's private parts off and make saddles out of them. I learned about the skin lamps that some of the Nazi peoples had in their houses. That kind of stuff it's fairly disturbing to me to think that we're sharing planets. That's monsters. That's way past Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. And it's not a guilt thing. Because that's the other defense people come up with is I didn't kill anybody, and why do you want me to feel bad? Or what, just the stereotypical things that fall into this conversation so readily.
Right.
It's just, this is
that was hundreds of years ago.
Yeah, it's so long ago, but
it's really not that long ago at all. It's,
no.
1840s, that's 150, 170 years ago.
Yeah. And then it is probably happening on the planet right now.
It's for sure happening
who are still
in
not
the Congo
civilized.
And other places, where they can get away with it. And there's, all of our cell phones are based on cobalt, and that mineral mostly is found in the Congo. And so then you have these corporations that go and buy it, but the people that are mining it are actually enslaving people and holding them at gunpoint and forcing them to go in these caves and mine it. And then they don't pay those people, you know what I mean? And then where did they learn that from? King Leopold? And it just goes back and back. There's these ways that we just allow and we pretend like they don't exist because we can be blissfully ignorant, but really that's what's happening.
Yeah, and we take it out and it comes out in our corporate America and it looks like something else, and maybe we're not slicing people up and making them bleed, but yeah, it's just a longer term throw the football down the and the ball's in midair right now, and I would love to turn my focus to what we're talking about now. It's given this experience,
the solution? And the thing, I think the thing that's challenging about the whole issue is you bring up all these atrocities and terrible things that happen. Well, how is it that we as a society make amends for that and come to terms with the reality of that So then we can create this more beautiful world where we're actually in line with each other. And that's the challenge, because first of all, if you're still listening to this podcast, God bless you.
Right. Yeah. Way to hang in there.
Seriously, because there's no, on some level, most people would just rather be like, I definitely don't want to hear about any of that. You're cutting off women's private parts and making saddles. That's the most disgusting thing ever. And that is actually the most disgusting thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
Yeah.
The lamps is gross too, but that's worse.
Yeah.
Like but then there are so many of us who, like I'm white, obviously. I'm European descent. I'm Swedish and Scottish and English and Irish.
We're probably related on one side.
We probably are. And also, like, I recognize that even within that, it's not like, oh, and then we're all African at some point. And I believe that for sure. And also all those people, the Swedes, and the Celtic people, there were tribal ways there. There were indigenous people there that were doing amazing things, and people living to be very old, and people that were living in harmony with nature. It's just like the greedy beast that got humanity then wanted to have control and rule over other people and create empire, which is really the enemy here.
It's the first creation of the fake thing that we all believe in now, right? Yeah. Exactly.
And so then how do we get back to all of our roots? And I think that's part of the issue, I think, with European descendant people is like, we don't, I think there's a reticence to take responsibility for any of that because, quote unquote, we did not do it, which is accurate. At some point, the wool just got pulled over everybody's eyes, and we got really way more concerned with material possessions and getting stuff and like dominating culture to avoid scarcity. And then that became the thing that we lost our connection to the earth and our connection to each other and our spiritual connection. And so that's the thing that has to be, that needs to be transformed, because I know for myself, like I don't espouse a religion. I grew up Christian, but it was loose Christianity. I think anybody who has an exclusion on God is full of crap. I very much believe in a lot of Native American traditions, Navajo, the Lakota. I grew up doing sweat lodges, but also then doing a lot of Buddhist work and meditation, et cetera. Like, I'm into whatever you got that's going to get me closer to God, I'm down. But the point that I'm trying to make is that way of being and looking at the world is incredibly fulfilling in a way that more money can never get me. Yeah. There's a level of happiness in knowing that what I stand for is harmony with the planet, and also just discovering more love in myself. Yeah, right. Yes. Like, one of the things that we talk about on this program a lot is the love operating system. That we all inherited this fear-based, greed-based operating system. And how do I love
scarcity, more? Right.
And asking myself, it's real basic. The love operating system is actively asking myself, how do I love more? How do I be more loving in situations where I don't feel like it? How do I love my life more? How do I love my wife more?
How do I love that mosquito?
Yeah.
And seeing its part in nature. Yeah.
Right. How do I love my calling more? And then the answers will come and follow the answers. And then all of a sudden, at some point, you're not woke, but you are waking. Yeah. And you are
maybe you have less wonderings a little bit.
Right.
or bigger ones. I don't know. It could be the other side. Yeah, absolutely.
So I bring all of that up to say, assuming that we can find a way as a culture, as a society, to make amends for the atrocities that were committed against indigenous people, including your people, then what is the way forward? Yeah. You mentioned, hey, what we really want is we want sovereignty for our tribe. We want to be federally recognized, not because we want to flip in casino. Yeah.
Right. And I've been like, I'm not talking about, I know it's becoming a reality and a given since the 1990s when we all voted Indian gaming in. But it convolutes what I'm talking about. I understand it's real. We will talk about it, but we're talking about this first.
Yeah.
Because I just, and I've gone through, when I was younger in the 90s and tribes started gaming, I didn't understand. I'm like, why them and not us? I don't understand what the difference is, because I didn't understand all this other stuff. And, and I was jealous of, I could see all this money coming in and people actually getting helped. And then time went by, later.
Getting helped.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that specifically.
One
what do
of
you
those
mean?
things, if you're suffering from the historic trauma, maybe drug abuse or
alcohol abuse,
all the
et cetera.
stuff, right? And you're in debt, and the whole poverty thing comes with its own bucket of when people live in poverty, what that is.
Right.
So if you have money, I don't care where it comes from, you're alleviating at least one straw.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm not saying that fixes anything, because I've watched that thing when people win the lottery and it just like takes these fairly regular folks and they don't have a relationship with money. And so it goes crazy, and then they end up like divorced and losing everything. It's
a crazy, it's like 98% of people who win $1 million lose it in the first 2 years.
There's a little bit of that aspect of it for me, is like, you're talking about people who have no relationship with money because they've never had money.
Right.
And if you have a good tribal government, then those funds would infuse all of the housing, the health, all the different
things. It would
things.
help raise people up to a level where basic needs are met.
Yes.
And they can live a more sovereign
And at least
life.
they wouldn't be ultra poor.
Right.
That's the one thing you can take out of it. And on the good end of things, it would change everything. Good leadership and tribal continuity.
Yeah.
It could change everything. And I've seen tribes that have done that. Because I've looked, because I was curious.
Is there a specific example that you can think of?
There's a Southern California tribe who, they had nothing. And now they're extremely wealthy, and they, like, nobody even knows who their tribal council. They're like, they call them ghost councils, that they step out of the light, I think, so they can truly not be messed with, because now they have so much money. Mm-hmm. They step back, and then they govern the people like they did in the past. Like, no spotlights, no stuff that's going to accidentally activate their egos and they become, some different people one day because they have money now. But they have purchased land, they have their casino, and then they bought land all around the casino. And they're doing reestablishing cultural practices, which in turn is helping a lot of the environmental movement. I wish I could think of the name of the tribe.
The Pechanga Casino.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But, we've voted as a tribe and as the tribal council that we are not going the gaming route. And I know that people go, yeah, right, because there have been examples where people promise not to game and they get through, legislation or whatever, and they pop out of legislation. And the first thing they do is get a casino. So, It's not the way for us. And we learned a lot about this early on when we thought it was the only way. They said, unless you have an investor giving you millions of dollars, you will never get recognition.
Yeah.
We're not going to get recognition anytime soon, probably without that either. There is no clear path forward.
Yeah.
And that's where I wish so much. And I look at our allies and this bigger voice to see, like, the recognized tribes that are around us who game, see each other as infringing upon each other's economic viability. Uh-huh. So that causes tension.
Yeah.
And in the boat of recognized tribes around us, we are not recognized, so we have no voice. Mm-hmm. And you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. Like, the recognized tribes around us have lots of money, and they would squelch our recognition if we wanted to game. And then if we don't want to game, people are saying, well, if you don't have an investor, who's ever going to back you or lobby for you or take you forward? So again and again, we find ourselves in these incredibly, I can say unfair moments, right, when we're the justification and we're justified to have something. But as far as money, that helps the poverty piece.
But obviously your goal here is you don't want to open a casino. You want recognition and sovereignty. Yes. Really, I think voice. And sovereignty meaning like, oh, okay, you're a recognized people. And then there are some reparations that are helpful from the federal government that would help the 134 people remaining.
Well, I've been taught that and this is just my own experience with my elders who are afraid of all these things. Mm-hmm. We don't use that word because it's
which word?
Reparations.
Right.
Because it's such a turnoff. It's, if you want to get people defensive, just drop that word in a conversation, you know? So,
but there are protections for people who are recognized.
There are protections. The biggest thing for me is, yes, the sovereignty and the ability to self-govern.
Yeah. The reparations thing, I don't understand why that pisses people off, but you're right. It really does piss people off.
It really, really does.
That's like,
it's
wow,
like
now you want something for
affirmative
being
action. Right.
What? Oh, so you were genocided and now you want something in return? Like, yeah.
Yeah. What we're talking about is like your question of how do we help amend something? Because for me, the best way to fix the past is to stop the shit from happening again.
Right.
Stop ignoring it. Right now, there is no adult in charge on this planet making any of the logical and righteous decisions that need to be made. My grandpa is my biggest example. When he talked culturally, he said, if something you did was going to harm someone else, you don't do it. Period.
Right. That's
it.
Pretty basic golden rule stuff.
That's not complex. That's not, we don't have to go to school for 80 years to try to figure that one out.
Yeah.
It's really simple.
Yeah.
And it would be just to give us our voice, give us our self-governance, give us our recognition. The federal government already has Indian programs with health, housing, education, economic development, all these things. It already exists. Give us our land back. Give us a land base back, because that was our reservation.
Yeah.
The government went out and purchased reservations for the other tribes, except for Ruffies and us. And we did not. We already had the land. And so when we were terminated, they took the land. So we got kind of the double shaft on almost all of these conversations. It's really strange. I'm like, is it the unfair fiddle or what?
Yeah.
And getting that voice back, getting us just to a politically level playing field, giving us the same resources the other recognized tribes have. We're not asking for anything extra than what already exists out there.
Yeah, because from my perspective, like, the gentrification is almost complete. Yeah. Do you know the
assimilation, right?
The assimilation is almost totally complete. Yeah. The whatever it was, breed the Indian out of the Indian or something.
Kill the Indian, save the man. Yeah.
Kill the Indian, save the man. Thank you.
Yeah.
That horse shit is almost complete because and also with so the gentrification is, or the assimilation, the gentrification is almost complete. You, particularly your tribe, 134 people left. That's so few people. So there's that. People like us can help with that in terms of your struggle and joining the fight and going to Nisenan.org. But also, to me, there's a recognition of, wait a minute, there's another way of being in the world and looking at the world and understanding that is expansive, that doesn't have to be antithetical to what's already happening. In other words, you don't have to, like you're saying, we don't have to go back to the Stone Ages, right?
Well, we can't, right?
And we can't. Forget it. There's no buffalo herds coming back. So we can't go back there, but we could actually look at and honor some of these ideas that come from your sacred traditions and indigenous sacred traditions that would actually enhance our quality of life so much more, because we would have so much more fulfillment in who we are and our purpose and our spiritual center.
Absolutely. If we all went out and just thought about, what would a landscape with the grizzly bear look like? How would we act differently in our day? Because they're huge and they can be really mean. Mm-hmm. They also are the ones who teach us how to mother. Mm-hmm. So we have our stories and our learning from these same beings that also will kill you, if you're not walking your walk or giving them the space that they deserve as a being. Yeah. If I just pretend just for a minute, that the only food I have tomorrow is salmon. That's it. Yeah. And I look around and I think what a great game this would be for younger people, kids and students. And you look like salmon used to be the food and now it is the only food. Mm-hmm. And you see, oh my goodness, well, the salmon don't come up here anymore. Why? And you start figuring out why. Because of the dams. Well, what do the dams do? Is there something that the a different system could do the same-ish thing the dam is doing? Yes, there actually are several choices.
Yeah.
And, playing that game of how easily and quickly, even for children, they would go, I need the salmon. That thing's in the way. We can change it into something else. It becomes this really logical way of thinking.
Right.
And if you do that if you start going with the tree, with this, with that, it's just really a cool way to think about our impact on the world.
That's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And I really think that is the answer, because it's like you were flipping the switch. Okay, there was the dominion model where we had claimed dominion over the earth and whatever bullshit that was. Right. But now to say, oh, no, we are caretakers of the earth. We are stewards of the earth. I think that's beautiful. And also, I mean, with the recognition, with the voting power, with the politics, I think really like what you're after, certainly what I'm after, is a recognition of the ways of indigenous people and just being closer to nature and seeing that spirit.
It's very, very important. And each tribe comes from a very specific geographic place. Mm-hmm. And they have that long relationship with that place better than anybody else. Yeah. And I know we have science, but we can test and smooth and shape stuff all we want, and we will still not have that depth of knowledge. Mm-hmm. And I understand that it's also, the tribes don't have to just give up all that knowledge. We talk a lot about tech now, the tribal ecological knowledge. And I'm always in this boat of like, one day I'm like, oh, wow, we got invited to something. And somebody like the National Forest actually wants to ask our opinion about something, and I'm shocked. And on the other hand, I'm shocked and appreciative. And on the other hand, I'm mad because with the stopping of the burning of the land here also came the stopping of the burning of our dead. And we're a cremating society. Mm-hmm. And all of our heavy mourning rituals and the just everything that goes with that. The
Nisenan is a cremating society.
Yes, and that's how our spirit released to go to our sacred mountain, which is my grandpa. My grandpa was the best. He said, our sacred mountain is the Sutter Buttes, but it's not polite to call it that. Because our most sacred place of all life, death, where we go when we die, we go to the roundhouse there and see our ancestors. We eat our first spirit food and we go off to the Milky Way. And it's called the Sutter Buttes. Mm. And Sutter, that would be, if I want to talk about reparations, that would be another thing, is like stop making heroes out of these disgusting, twisted, horrible people. That promise alone. Are named after. Yeah. That Sutter was a child molester and he held slaves. And he was disgusting, and he's held up as.
What did the Nisenan call those mountains?
Estomyanim, which is Middle Mountain.
Estoniamim?
Estomyanim.
Estomyanim.
Yep.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Middle Mountain.
That'd be a good thing to do, is to rename the mountains.
Yes. And I must say, so that I don't get kicked by the rest of my staff and the board and all the nonprofit stuff, because I understand that money is what makes the world go round. And right now that is absolutely a fact, because we're a nonprofit. So we rely heavily on grants and donations.
You can't do what you do without that. Yeah,
absolutely. And if we need to grow and I've just got the yumminess. It was just me for so long. And I'm like, just give me staff one day and watch me grow, and I can stretch $1, let me tell you. And now I have staff and we're starting to receive funds. But we got a $120,000 anonymous donation from someone last year.
Wow.
And I got to put it all toward, what's it called? Tribal enrichment.
Cool.
And we were able to literally affect the lives of tribal members. Got some of our younger members who have children. Like one of my cousins was hitchhiking with her daughter from Camptonville all the time, and she got a car. The cheapest car on the lot. It was like $6,000, but that's unheard of that she would just get a car. So I think it's the first time I've ever seen, I saw the impact of that $120,000, and I was able to actually, and it was gone that fast, because I wish I could stretch it further, but that money is absolutely important.
And also, I just want to say, I know for a fact that you work your ass off, because it took me 2 months to schedule this interview. And that was because and I talked to your assistant, and I went, and I know how hard you work. I know that you're constantly in motion doing things. Yes. And so if, when you do get involved, if you choose to get involved with the Nisenan, know that the money is going towards good things,
Absolutely.
Actual things to fighting this fight. And
I just advocated
and people can
for,
also email there and get involved and offer their services and offer that become an ally.
Yes, and we're building out. So we have the Ancestral Homelands Reciprocity Program, ARP for short. People have been joining up. It's just such a shocker what it does to the tribal members.
Yeah.
So we have this. You can just voluntarily donate on a reoccurring basis. We have people who do $3 a month, but collectively, we're around $9,000 a month.
That's great.
But what that does, am I close-ish? I'm asking my $8,000 a month, $9,000 a month, somewhere in that realm. And what that does, though, like what it did to my mom, she could not believe that we had that much value to our community.
Yeah.
And it's going to make me cry again. But that is a huge piece of our budget. It's very important. Yeah. And the more staff we get, the more topics we can tackle. But we've also been at the helm of educating everybody about this.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I'm the one who's educating anybody is funny. I barely got through high school. And so it's just, and if it wasn't me and I could get past myself, I see the value, I see the hard work, I see the dedication, the responsibility. And it's all on a pretty, I just advocated for myself a raise. And it was so hard for me to do.
I'm sure.
It was really, 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 really hard.
Good
because
job. You deserve it.
I can't fit myself into that.
But yeah, that's amazing. And I think it's beautiful that you obviously also you've surrounded yourself with people that are avidly concerned with making your mission manifest. And so therefore there's a level of integrity and accountability around the Nisenan organization that's really like, I don't want to say unmatched because I'm sure that exists other places, but it's definitely
because it's
there
incredible.
for you.
And if we didn't have that, we're so small and we're so damaged, or I don't know. We just don't have the internal resources. Yes. The internal resources just aren't naturally there where we all went to school for something and we know what we're doing or how to do it to fit into the system. But absolutely. And then there's also the ways to reach out if you want to become that on the ARP membership. Or supporter. I guess we don't really use the word membership, but that way. And then for education, we're working on curriculum. We have the gallery in Nevada City that is just
awesome.
Filled with educational moments.
Oh, I was going to say this. I went to the movie theater at the Onyx, and the guy came out and he was like, "Yeah, we just want to recognize that we're on Nisenan land and."
In person, not even a video.
The guy walks out and says that, and I was like, "What? That's amazing!" That's
and they modeled that so early on. We didn't ask the Onyx to do anything. They reached out to us. Cool. They made those beautiful slides, and we're just like, "What is happening?" It was just, it was amazing, and it felt easy because they were on board.
Yeah, and I think that's just so beautiful. I mean, I know for myself, and a lot of the reason why I wanted to have you on is my wife and I walked into this house and we were just like, this is it. But it wasn't just the house is great, but it's the land. Yeah, absolutely. And the land is a result of the people that were here before. And there's no gold mine remnants on this property or right around here. It sounds maybe a little woo-woo. I don't care. The people that were on this land before, they're still here, and I feel their presence. And I mean, if you look at quantum physics, time is all happening at the same time. So they are actually here.
They are, and they're watching us.
They're watching us.
I wasn't even going to say that earlier because I'm not trying to scare people, but they.
And I hope that they feel honored.
All of humanity
by this conversation.
I hope so.
And also, I wanted to say something else because before we started the podcast, you mentioned, you're at a pivotal place, and I really can relate to that with my own career and what I'm up to. And also the voice that's been coming very clear to me in my own deep prayer is I am king, which sounds sort of weird to say. Mm-hmm. I don't mean I am king and I will rule over
That's
everybody.
What I want. I want my crown and my stick so I can tell everybody what to do. Yeah. It'll be good though. You just wait. Just give it to me.
It'll be good. Right. But I don't mean it like that. I mean I am king of my life. I am king of the story that I tell myself and the life that I am creating. I am sovereign in and of myself. Wow. If I am king of my life and totally responsible for everything in it, then
then
how do I
shut
behave?
Out all that noise that makes it crazy in there.
Then how do I behave? And I keep getting tested on that. Like I'm not going to get into the whole story here, but my father passed away.
I'm sorry.
And I just went to his funeral, and I had to fight to speak at his funeral against I'm not going to say, but a particular clergy person. And then, so we changed churches. I let that person go, but it was so weird to me that I was in a conversation with somebody that was trying to convince me not to speak at my father's funeral because they knew better. And I was like,
and that's where you need an advocate helping you, because you don't want to speak, and they're going, you'll regret it if you don't.
I just was like, immediately I was like, no, I will speak at my father's funeral. I will honor him with words and song. And that's just how it's going to be. But I mentioned that to you because I get that you're in a position where there's part of you that thinks, dude, I have to do this. It's on me. There's nobody else that's doing it. And like, I have the voices of my ancestors in my head, which you probably do, screaming like, fight for justice, for God's sake. First of all, I hope and pray for you that you see all the support that is around you, including this conversation, and whatever we can do as a community to support you.
Because it's contagious, right?
It is.
Yeah.
And also, like, I really encourage you to embrace your own sovereignty and make you into a saddle.
So knowing that's really strong, knowing that actually I am the king, queen, whatever, I'm the queen, and I can, because the noise, it's that noise, like when you're doing sound check with getting levels on throwing the noise out there to being off the room or what, it's like that in my head all the time. And it does influence me, but it's usually it enhances my fear and my doubts and I never want to be egotistical or act like I want the spot. I have a spotlight when I play in my band. I don't need it here. I've never desired any of those things. I always feel like I'm the one speaking for all of us. Oh, great. That's going to turn out real well, but there are times when it takes so long to convince myself to show up to things and then show up in a way like today. It's so comfortable. Most meetings or interactions aren't like this. It's like a big room with a table and full of people with suits and mostly men. And, and I'm sitting there and they're talking in acronyms and I'm like, what's going on? You know? And then I'm versed in that stuff. I'm like, ugh. But what a great world it would be to just embrace that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. I love that. And thank you for sharing that with me.
I really want to acknowledge you as like a warrior for your people and a warrior for the planet.
Thank you.
I really I'm really moved by who you are and how you are in the world.
Thank you.
And I want you to know that like you have my sword.
That's awesome.
Can
we play music together someday?
Sure. Oh, totally. Cool. Let's do it.
Thank you for saying that, though.
But
I appreciate it.
And I want you to know, like, from myself, and also, as a member of the community, I am, and I know Amber, your assistant. I know people who know you. You have a really good reputation in this community.
That's awesome.
Like just all over the place. Oh, you're interviewing Shelly? Wow.
Really?
People are very impressed.
That's so funny.
And so I want you to know that. I want you to know that we look at you as a leader. And the more that you choose that for yourself, the more power you will have, I believe. And so I just also want you to know, like, from my heart to yours, like any feelings of inadequacy that you might feel. And I get that that's like normal. And frankly, on some level, that's good because it keeps you humble.
Yeah.
You don't need that. Like, you are a very powerful human. And we are here to support you and love you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I hear it from my staff and my closies, my husband, Yeah. And it's so hard to see that in myself. And I want my family and my tribal members to be proud. And I do think that when we don't know what's going to happen until we're dead, what is God? What is anything, right? We'll never, when you're dead, and then you get to know.
Yeah.
And then we'll wipe your mind. If you come back, you still won't know again.
Right.
But I like to think that when you die and your spirit comes out, you're in a world with, like, if you've killed a bunch of mice in your life, for no reason, they're going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to be like, how did you treat us?
Yeah.
That's how we're going to treat you.
Right.
Or whatever it is. I love to, there's parts of
There
that
is a
that are culturally
reciprocation.
relevant.
Karma is real. I believe it too.
And doing the best. I mean, I know you got to, sometimes, you have to smash that spider if it's dangerous and those kind of things. But I would also smash a human if it was endangering my child.
Right.
Just equally with a spider. I'm totally equal.
I'm not looking to do that, but if had to.
No,
okay.
but I'm not going to just equally kill, except the mosquitoes. Oh, darn it. I have a hard time with them. But yeah,
Vampires.
Anyway, you get it, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I think also the more that you embrace this being queen, being the head, I mean, you are the leader of your tribe.
Well, I'm a spokesperson.
Okay, you're the spokesperson of your tribe.
Yes.
However you want to frame it, I get it. But like you are that person. And so I think the more that you embrace that path, the more freedom that you'll have. I do believe that. And we can play music together regardless. Okay. Cool.
Yeah,
that's great.
I think that's it.
Awesome. All right. Well, I really want to thank you for being here. It really means a lot to me. And I'm looking forward to making sure that the Nisenan get recognized federally. I'm sure everybody who's listening is also on that train. And really just appreciate you sharing your wisdom and your history and your perspective. It's just been enlightening and enlivening and enlivening. And I really appreciate you.
Yay!
Yeah. Awesome.
It takes all of us, right?
Indeed. Lunacy is a creation of myself, Geoff Eido, with podcast management by Kimberly Joy Voice. Thank you all for listening. If you'd like to become part of our team, please go to patreon.com/Lunacy podcast and join up. Definitely go to nisenan.org and join their team as well. Much love, everybody. Yeah. Much love.